What does it take for the Earth to swallow a man whole? In the vast, sun-scorched expanse of the Grand Canyon, the answer is not much. We are standing at the edge of forever, where a billion years of geology stare back with silent indifference. The air is thick, smelling of hot dust and dry juniper. This is where Dr. Aris Thorne, a geologist whose mind was as deep and layered as the canyon itself, is last seen alive. He is tracing a stratum of Vishnu schist with his fingertips, his face alight with a feverish discovery. His team sees him break from the camp, moving with purpose toward a sheer rock face, his silhouette shrinking against the colossal ochre walls. He is following a whisper from the stone, a secret only he can hear. He turns a corner of the trail, a brief smile on his face, and simply vanishes. He doesn't fall. There is no cry. He is there, and then he is not. The canyon just takes him. Before we dig deeper into the mystery that follows, subscribe if you believe some secrets can't stay buried forever. The silence that follows is deafening. It's a physical presence pressing in from all sides. The search begins as a frantic, hopeful flurry. Helicopters are mere dragonflies, their rotor wash barely stirring the ancient dust on the canyon floor. Searchers, their faces streaked with sweat and red dirt, rappel into crevices so deep the sun has never touched their bottoms. They find his camp exactly as he left it. A research notebook is open on his cot, the page filled with frantic, brilliant scrawls about a geological anomaly. His coffee is still in its tin mug, now cold and filmed with dust. It's a ghost scene. A life paused mid-sentence. Days bleed into a week. Hope begins to fray, worn thin by the relentless sun and the sheer, brutal scale of the landscape. Every promising lead dissolves into a dead end of rock and shadow. The emotional climax isn't a single loud moment, but a slow, crushing realization. It's in the quiet slump of a search coordinator's shoulders as he calls off the active search. It's in the hollowed-out look of Aris's family, their faces becoming masks of grief as they accept the canyon as his final resting place. The official file is stamped, presumed deceased. The case grows cold, buried under the weight of time and the impossibility of the terrain. For 10 years, Dr. Aris Thorne is just another ghost story whispered around canyon campfires. But the canyon isn't a tomb. It's a vault, and vaults sometimes can be opened. Far from any established trail, a full decade later, a hiker trying to frame the perfect sunset photograph stumbles, her camera falling from her grip and clattering down a short, steep scree slope. As she retrieves it, her fingers brush against something not of the rock. It's a tattered leather strap, disappearing into a crack in the stone, attached to something heavy, hidden, and utterly impossible. The last sliver of the sun bleeds out behind the canyon's western rim, plunging the vast chasm into a cold blue twilight. An anxious wind is picking up, whispering through the pinon pines and carrying the scent of dust and deep earth chill. Below, the Grand Canyon is no longer a postcard vista. It is an abyss, a labyrinth of shadows that swallows light and sound whole. Park rangers, their faces etched with practiced urgency, are fanning out from the trailhead. Their bright yellow jackets are small, defiant sparks against the encroaching darkness. They call his name, Dr. Thorne, Elias, and the sound echoes once, twice, before being utterly consumed by the sheer, indifferent scale of the rock. A helicopter is now beating its way through the air above, its rotor blades chopping a rhythmic, percussive track over the rising panic. Its searchlight, a brilliant white spear, stabs down into the canyons, sweeping across sheer cliff faces and tangled scree slopes. For a moment, the beam illuminates a lone, twisted juniper clinging to a ledge, making it look like a skeletal hand reaching from the stone. But there is no sign of a man. The light only serves to reveal 1,000 more places to hide, 1,000,000 more ways to be lost. At the command post near the rim, Dr. Thorne's wife is wrapped in a coarse wool blanket, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, are fixed on the chasm as if her gaze alone could pierce the gloom and find him. The static-laced chatter from the Rangers' radios is a constant, meaningless hum, a language of failure. Whoa! Everyone raising part station, immediately stopping the trail. The light holds steady, a silent, unwavering accusation. On the radio, a pilot's voice crackles with a new tension, a clipped report that cuts through the static. Down at the rim, every head turns towards the focused beam of light. Emotional climax. Thorne's wife pushes herself to her feet, the blanket falling away. She takes a stumbling step towards the edge, her breath catching in her throat. A ranger gently puts a hand on her arm, but she doesn't feel it. All she sees is that single stark point of light in the overwhelming darkness. A choked, guttural sound escapes her lips. A name, a prayer, a sob. It's impossible to tell which. The hope that had been a flickering candle flame in her heart is instantly extinguished by a tidal wave of pure, cold dread. She knows, with a certainty that freezes her soul, that the light has found something they were never meant to see. One cinematic transition. A veteran ranger, his face a mask of grim resolve, turns from the radio, his gaze sweeping over the frantic scene. He ignores the helicopter, his eyes scanning the ground near the trailhead where they first started. He kneels, his own flashlight beam tracing the edge of the path, and there, almost hidden in the dust, is a single clear boot print. It's unmistakable, but it isn't pointing down the well-worn trail. It's angled sharply away, heading directly toward the precipice of a notoriously unstable, unmarked overlook. The late afternoon sun spills through the dusty window of Dr. Aris Thorne's university office, catching motes of chalk dust that dance in the amber light. The room is a geologist's sanctuary, smelling of old paper, ink, and the cool mineral scent of the earth itself. Aris is hunched over his desk, not writing, but listening. He holds a simple piece of granite, no bigger than his palm, turning it over and over. His fingers, calloused and stained, trace the interlocking crystals of quartz and feldspar, as if reading a sacred text. Such a violent birth, he whispers to himself, his voice a low, reverent hum. Forged in fire and pressure, then a journey of 1,000,000 years, just to rest here in my hand. To his colleagues, Aris Thorne is a giant in his field. His research on seismic precursors is groundbreaking. But to his students, he is something more, a storyteller. We see him in a lecture hall, not behind a podium, but walking among the desks, placing a trilobite fossil into a young woman's hand. He doesn't lecture about the Paleozoic era. He speaks of the ancient ocean that this small creature once navigated, his gentle voice painting a world that has been dead for 250 million years. His passion is a quiet, steady flame, drawing people in, making them feel the immense, silent weight of deep time. He is a man of profound patience, a soul who believes that all answers will eventually be revealed if one is simply willing to wait. Dramatic highlight. The scene shifts to the wind-swept Badlands, months before his disappearance. The air is thin and cold. Aris is on his hands and knees, painstakingly brushing away sediment from a rock face. For 2 days, he's followed a fault line that his research predicted would show unusual stress fractures. His knuckles are raw, his face is chapped by the wind. Then, his brush reveals it. A series of impossibly thin, dark veins, like ink bleeding through stone. They aren't natural formations. They are geometric, precise, forming patterns that look almost like a circuit board etched into the very bedrock of the planet. Emotional climax. He stops. The wind howls around him, but he hears nothing. He slowly lowers his brush, his gaze locked on the discovery. His breath catches in his throat. It's not the triumphant gasp of a scientist. It's the terrified, awe-struck inhalation of a man who has just stumbled upon a truth that threatens to shatter his entire understanding of the world. Every theory he's ever had, every law of geology he has ever taught, crumbles to dust in this single, silent moment. A single tear escapes his eye, freezing instantly on his cheek. This gentle man, who dedicated his life to the slow, predictable narrative of the Earth, has just found a chapter that should not exist. His entire life has been built on the principle that the Earth gives up its secrets, slowly, peacefully, to those who are patient enough to listen. But as he stares at the impossible script written in the stone, he is completely unaware that he has just become a secret himself, one that someone is willing to go to violent, impatient lengths to keep buried. The official search helicopters are gone now. Their rhythmic chopping sound, once a maddening metronome counting the hours of failure, has been replaced by an even more torturous sound: silence. In the family home, hundreds of miles from the Grand Canyon's yawning maw, time itself is slowing down, becoming thick and heavy like cooling tar. Days bleed into one another, marked only by the rising and setting of a sun that feels indifferent, almost mocking. Aris's mother is standing at the kitchen sink, her hands submerged in warm, soapy water. She stares out the window, but she isn't seeing the familiar backyard. She sees the chasm, the vast, empty space that swallowed her son whole. The phone on the counter, once a source of frantic hope with every ring, now sits mute. The designated liaison officer no longer calls with non-updates. The case file, she imagines, is being moved from a desk to a cabinet, from the cabinet to a dusty archive shelf. It's becoming a cold case, a statistic. Dramatic highlight. Aris's father sits in the darkened living room. The only light emanates from the television screen, where a younger, vibrant Aris is laughing. It's a home video from a birthday years ago. He plays the clip over and over, his finger hovering on the remote. He isn't watching to remember the joy. He is studying his son's face, searching his eyes, listening to the cadence of his voice as if it holds some cryptic key to his disappearance. The ghostly laughter echoes in the suffocating quiet. A sound from a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. He's looking for a clue, a shadow, a premonition he might have missed, a single frame that could explain the impossible. But the boy on the screen just keeps laughing, forever young, forever happy, forever oblivious. The limbo is the cruelest part. Hope is a disease, flaring up with a misremembered detail or a stranger's well-meaning but empty theory, only to be beaten back down by the brutal reality of nothingness. Despair is a constant, a low hum beneath the floorboards of their life. Emotional climax. One afternoon, while cleaning, Aris's mother opens his closet. A wave of familiar scent, laundry detergent, and something uniquely him was supposed to hit her, but it doesn't. There's just the sterile, woody smell of the closet itself. She pulls out his favorite gray sweatshirt, the one he wore constantly. She lifts it to her face, burying her nose in the soft, worn fabric, inhaling deeply, desperately. Nothing, not a trace of him remains. It's just cloth. The final, sensory thread connecting her to him has snapped. A choked, silent sob escapes her as her knees give way. She collapses onto the floor, clutching the empty garment, her body shaking with a grief so profound it has no sound. Cinematic transition, hook. The weight of this silence is crushing them, but in that darkness, something new is beginning to stir. As his wife weeps, Aris's father finally turns off the television, plunging the room into blackness. He walks not to comfort her, but to the dining room table. He flicks on the overhead light, illuminating a stack of topographical maps of the Grand Canyon. With a new, cold resolve burning in his eyes, he unrolls the first one. The official search might be over, but as he traces the jagged contour lines with his finger, his own is just beginning. He would not let the silence win. He would tear an answer from the heart of that canyon himself, even if it meant getting lost in it too. Years after Aris' search parties have faded into memory, the sky above the Grand Canyon is turning a venomous shade of purple-gray. The air grows impossibly thick, heavy with the smell of ozone and damp dust. A deep, gut-vibrating rumble is not just a sound, it's a feeling, a pressure wave that travels from the soles of the feet straight to the heart. This is not a normal summer storm. This is a reckoning. The first drops of rain are not drops at all. They are heavy, explosive splatters that hit the ancient crimson rock like liquid bullets. Within moments, a sheet of water is descending, a vertical river falling from the heavens. The roar is deafening, a constant, crushing white noise that drowns out all thought. Down in the canyon's depths, the Colorado River, usually a languid ribbon of green, is beginning to churn. Tributaries that were bone-dry an hour ago are now violent, frothing torrents, disgorging mud and debris into the main channel. Then it comes, a monstrous, 10-foot-high wall of churning brown water surges around a bend. It's a liquid beast, filled with the splintered remains of 100-year-old juniper trees and boulders the size of cars. It moves with an unholy speed, a grinding, scouring force that is physically reshaping the canyon floor in real time. The water is a sculptor and a destroyer, its raw power both terrifying and magnificent to behold. It slams into a narrow, unassuming side canyon, a place previously choked with rockfall and deemed impassable for centuries. The force of the deluge is like a battering ram, blasting away tons of rock and sediment that have sat undisturbed since before human memory. As quickly as it began, the storm breaks. The deluge slows to a drizzle and then stops. A profound, ringing silence descends, broken only by the trickling of countless new waterfalls. The sun pierces through the bruised clouds, casting long, dramatic fingers of light into the newly carved chasm. The floodwaters are receding almost as fast as they arrived, draining away into the earth, leaving behind a landscape scoured clean, raw, and glistening wet. The air smells of rain, wet stone, and raw, exposed earth. As the last of the muddy torrent drains from the mouth of that impassable side canyon, a single beam of sunlight catches something. It's a sharp, distinct glint from deep within a rock fissure that just hours ago was buried under 30 feet of ancient debris. It's not the dull sheen of quartzite or the porous texture of sandstone. It's something metallic, something man-made, its surface scarred and bent, but undeniably out of place. It's a silent, stubborn secret. The canyon has finally been forced to surrender. Weeks bleed into a month, and the river, once a roaring monster, is now a placid, muddy artery through a scarred landscape. The sun hangs low, casting a weak, golden light over the devastation. A young park ranger, Leo, is picking his way through the boneyard the flood left behind. He is documenting the damage, his boots sinking into the thick, cloying silt with every step. The air is heavy with the smell of decay, wet earth, rotting vegetation, and the faint, metallic tang of ruin. He is surrounded by a tangled graveyard of uprooted trees, twisted fragments of homes, and the sad, unrecognizable debris of countless lives. It's a somber, silent task, punctuated only by the buzz of flies and the crunch of gravel under his feet. Then, he sees it, a dark, rectangular shape, half buried and wedged between the gnarled roots of a massive oak tree and a pile of river-smooth stones. It's not the bright, synthetic color of modern plastics or the rusted brown of old scrap metal. It's something different, something old. He feels a pull of curiosity cut through his methodical surveying. Kneeling down, he digs his gloved fingers into the cold, wet mud, working to free the object. The debris resists, holding its prize tight. With a final, determined wrench, the object pulls free, with a sickening, sucking sound, landing with a heavy, sodden thud at his feet. It's a field kit, a satchel made of thick, oilskin canvas, now stained dark and stiff with water damage. The brass buckles are tarnished with a greenish patina. A strange feeling, a prickle of unease, crawls up his spine. This feels personal, ancient. He fumbles with the main clasp, his heart beginning to beat a little faster. It's stuck fast, but he forces it open. Inside, the contents are a chaotic slurry of mud and water. But as he carefully shifts a waterlogged journal, his gaze falls upon the inside flap of the satchel. Faded, but pressed deep into the worn leather, are two words. His breath catches in his throat. The air seems to crystallize. His mind, which was just moments ago focused on erosion patterns and falling timber, is now reeling. He reads the name again, tracing the letters with a trembling finger. Aris Thorne. The name is a local legend, a ghost story told around campfires. The brilliant ethnobotanist who vanished without a trace in the flash flood 20 years ago, taking his controversial research with him. Leo is holding a ghost. He is holding the last known possession of a man who dissolved into myth. A chill, completely unrelated to the damp air, shoots through him. He looks from the name on the satchel to the tattered, pulpy notebooks still nestled inside. They are almost certainly destroyed. Their ink bled into meaningless Rorschach blots. But what if they aren't? The weight of the discovery presses down on him, the sudden, impossible significance of this piece of river trash. This changes everything. The questions Aris Thorne's disappearance left behind, questions of forgotten histories and hidden truths, are no longer just whispers in the wind. They are right here, heavy and real in his hands. The rusted latches of the field kit finally surrender with a metallic shriek that cuts through the sterile silence of the lab. A wave of musty air, thick with the scent of river mud and old secrets, washes over the table. Inside, a chaotic collection of items lies submerged in a shallow puddle of murky water. The explorer's gloved hands hover over the contents, trembling slightly. This is it, the first real contact with the last moments of Aris. He feels a strange mix of clinical curiosity and a deeply personal dread, as if he's about to intrude on something sacred. He carefully lifts out a rock hammer, its steel head pitted with orange rust, its wooden handle swollen and dark. A set of precision calipers follows, their mechanisms frozen solid by corrosion. These are the artifacts of a man dedicated to the earth, to its solid, measurable truths. Yet here, they feel alien, like relics from a forgotten religion. He places them on a sterile white cloth, their damp weight leaving dark imprints. His focus returns to the box. Tucked beneath the tools, nestled in the silt, is a small leather notebook. Its cover is warped, the pages fused into a pulpy, inseparable block. A pang of disappointment hits him, sharp and cold. The answers, the final thoughts, might be lost forever. He runs a finger along the swollen edge, feeling the fragile, waterlogged paper. Dramatic highlight. As his finger traces the edge, it catches on something hard. He carefully teases it out from between the fused cover and the first page. It's a photograph, encased in a crude, handmade lamination of what looks like packing tape. The plastic is scratched and cloudy, but the image within is miraculously preserved. It's Aris. He's not in expedition gear, but a simple shirt, smiling, his arm around a woman who laughs back at the camera. For a fleeting second, the explorer feels an intense connection, a stab of empathy that makes his breath catch in his throat. He's no longer just a missing scientist. He's a husband, a man with a life, a love, now reduced to a ghost in a photograph. He turns the photo over. Scrawled on the back in hurried, desperate pen strokes are a few fragmented notes, the ink bleeding into the paper fibers. His eyes dart across the page, his mind racing to connect the disjointed words. Fissure, not on any chart, humming sound, deep. The words paint a picture of discovery, of excitement turning to confusion. He traces the last line, written with so much pressure that it's etched into the photo paper. The writing is barely legible, a frantic, chaotic scrawl. What's at? His blood runs cold as he finally deciphers the last two words. Words that have nothing to do with geology and everything to do with primal fear. They are stark, chilling, and hang in the air like a death sentence. It's hollow. The last of the kit's contents are laid out on the worn wooden table. A sparse collection of corroded tools and faded notebooks. A wave of cold disappointment is washing over her. The trail feels like it's ending right here, in this dusty, forgotten cabin, with nothing but relics of a journey cut short. Her fingers, coated in a fine layer of grime, trace the inside lining of the canvas field kit one last time. A gesture of pure, final hope. That's when she feels it, a subtle unevenness in the stitching, a slight bulge in the fabric near the base. Her breath catches. Working her fingernail under the tough thread, she pulls. With a dry, tearing sound, a false bottom gives way. A single, tightly folded object, wrapped in oilcloth, tumbles out and lands on the table with a soft, almost imperceptible thud. Unwrapping it, she reveals not paper, but a sheet of thin, remarkably preserved vellum. The air suddenly feels thick, heavy with the scent of old ink and something else, an ozone-like tang of profound discovery. She carefully unfolds it beneath the flickering glow of her lantern. It's a map, but unlike any she has ever seen. It's hand-drawn, the lines executed with a strange, unnerving precision. There is no compass rose, no scale, no familiar coastlines. Instead, there are swirling vortexes that resemble nebulae, interconnected by jagged lines that look more like an electrocardiogram than any road or river. Strange triangular symbols are clustered in some regions, while others are dominated by patterns that mimic cellular structures, as if she's looking through a microscope and a telescope at the very same time. Her mind is racing, trying to force logic onto the beautiful chaos. She turns it upside down, then sideways, the soft crinkle of the vellum the only sound in the oppressive silence. Frustration is beginning to prickle at the edges of her focus. It's a dead language, a cartography for a world that doesn't exist. She slumps back in her chair, the weight of the puzzle pressing down on her. But then, a glimmer of an idea. Her eyes dart to a star chart she'd tacked to the wall. On a desperate hunch, she takes the vellum and holds it up against the chart, letting the lantern light shine through both. Dramatic highlight moment. The lines don't match, but the patterns, they do. A cluster of symbols on the vellum mirrors the constellation of Orion, but it's inverted, a mirror image. Another symbol corresponds to the location of Polaris, the North Star, but it's shifted several degrees to the west. A jolt of pure adrenaline surges through her, wiping away every trace of fatigue. A wide, incredulous smile spreads across her face. This isn't a map of the land. It's not even a map of the current sky. It's a celestial chart from a different time, or a map that uses the ancient sky as a key. He wasn't just exploring, he was navigating by the ghosts of stars. The intellectual challenge transforms from an impossible barrier into an electrifying invitation. He was brilliant, and she is now the only one who knows it. The unspeakable transition of society. Her gaze, now sharp with purpose, scans the map again. She notices something she missed before, a tiny, faint marking in the lower corner, almost obscured by a dark smudge. It's not a celestial symbol. It's a sequence of numbers followed by a single, terrifyingly familiar insignia. Her heart hammers against her ribs. It's the same three-pronged glyph she saw carved into the canyon wall, the one that seemed to watch her as she passed. This map isn't just a guide. It's a key to a lock she never even knew existed. The stale air of the records room hangs thick, a heavy blanket tasting of dust and decaying paper. Fluorescent lights hum a low, monotonous drone overhead, casting a sterile, greenish glow on the stacks of cardboard boxes. Detective Miller slides a hefty one, marked Thorne, Aris, Unsolved, in faded black ink, across the metal table. The screech of cardboard on steel sets his teeth on edge. He pries open the lid, releasing a musty sigh that's been trapped for over a decade. Inside, the life and death of a man are compressed into brittle manila folders. He lifts the top one, the paper feeling fragile, almost like skin beneath his calloused fingertips. This isn't just reopening a case, it's excavating a tomb. The weight of time is a physical presence in the room, a silent partner in this investigation. He spends hours absorbing the ghosts of the past, the initial reports, the dead-end leads, the grainy crime scene photos that show a life violently interrupted. Later, he sits across from Aris Thorne's widow, her living room a shrine of stillness and memory. The air is thick with the scent of potpourri and old grief. Her hands tremble as she clutches a porcelain teacup, her eyes clouded with cataracts and sorrow, searching his for an answer he doesn't have. He's not just a detective, he's an archaeologist of pain, carefully digging through layers of her family's loss. He listens to her voice, thin and reedy, recount the day her world ended, and his own resolve hardens into something sharp and unyielding. The official files are cold, but this, her quiet, unending sorrow, is the fire. He feels her desperate hope transfer to him, a sacred burden he now carries alongside his badge. Back in the sterile quiet of the station, the faces from the case files stare back at him from a corkboard. Aris, his family, his colleagues. They are all frozen in time, smiling in photographs taken before the tragedy. The old theories feel like worn-out paths leading nowhere. Frustration begins to gnaw at him. He flips through a stack of miscellaneous evidence logs, the endless lists of cataloged items blurring together. Then his fingers catch on something tucked inside a forgotten sleeve, a single glossy 8x10 photograph. It's a wide shot of Aris's study, deemed non-essential at the time. Miller almost dismisses it, but something makes him pause. He pins it to the very center of the board, his eyes scanning, tracing the lines of bookshelves, the clutter on the desk. And then he sees it. Tucked behind a row of leather-bound classics, almost perfectly obscured by shadow, is a small carved wooden bird, its beak pointed directly at the window. It doesn't match anything else in the room. It's not on any evidence list. He remembers Aris's widow mentioning his paralyzing fear of heights, how he never even opened that specific window. The bird is pointing directly toward his greatest fear, like a signpost. It's a message left by someone who knew him intimately. The air in Aris's study is thick with the ghosts of old arguments, smelling of stale paper, dust, and the faint acidic scent of ink. The investigator, Kalen, is drowning in a sea of documents, the desk lamp his only lighthouse. For hours, he's been tracing the fault lines of a brilliant career. But now, he's looking for the fractures in a life. His fingers, smudged with graphite and dust, sift through a folder labeled Correspondence Professional. It starts as a slow, predictable excavation, terse rejections from academic journals, passive-aggressive notes from a rival professor about unsubstantiated theories. It's the petty debris of intellectual warfare, nothing more. Kalen is about to dismiss it all as professional noise when his hand brushes against a different texture. Tucked between two glossy grant proposals is a single sheet of cheap, yellowed legal paper, folded into a tight square. The crease is so deep, it's starting to tear. As he unfolds it, the harsh, angular handwriting seems to vibrate on the page. It isn't a peer review. It's a raw wound of a letter from a local landowner. The words are practically carved into the paper, accusing Aris of geological trespassing, of using his research as a cover to devalue family land for a corporate buyout. The letter ends with a chillingly simple promise. You scientists think you're gods, moving mountains. But some of us are still down here on the ground, and we know how to make things disappear. Dramatic highlight. Kalen holds the letter under the lamplight, the paper so thin he can almost see through it. The threat is no longer academic. It's primal. It's about soil, heritage, and money. He feels a shift in the room's atmosphere, as if a window has been opened to a much colder, more dangerous world. He drops the letter and moves to Aris's laptop, his own breathing now audible in the silent room. He pulls up a chain of archived emails with a massive resource exploitation company, GeoCorp. Aris's research had single-handedly halted their billion-dollar mining operation, proving the land they'd targeted was geologically unstable. The final email from the CEO isn't angry. It's eerily calm. Dr. Valerius, your work has caused significant complications. Obstacles, however, are temporary by nature. They are either overcome or they are removed. A profound chill washes over Kalen, colder than the late-night air seeping through the window frame. He pushes his chair back, the groan of the casters cutting through the stillness. He's been looking at Aris as a scientist who was killed, but now he sees him as a gatekeeper who was eliminated. The land disputes, the corporate blockades, the academic jealousies, they weren't separate quarrels. They were a web of motives, all converging on this one man who knew too much about the earth beneath their feet. The sheer number of potential enemies makes his head spin. It wasn't a single rival. It was a whole ecosystem of greed that Aris had disturbed. Cinematic transition. His gaze sweeps across the desk, a landscape of organized chaos. His eyes catch on something out of place, a small, tarnished silver key resting on top of a locked wooden box. It wasn't there before. It must have been concealed under a stack of papers he just moved. With a click, the lock opens. Inside, there isn't gold or documents, just a single, state-of-the-art voice recorder. He presses play, and a distorted voice, digitally altered but seething with fury, fills the silent room. "He told you to stop. I'm telling you again." The investigator's breath is a slow, steady rhythm in the otherwise silent room. Lamplight pools onto the desk, turning the ancient, brittle map a jaundiced yellow. His fingers, smudged with graphite, trace the faint, spidery lines. They are not trails, they are whispers. He's been cross-referencing them for hours against modern topographical charts of the Grand Canyon. The crisp white paper a stark contrast to the browned parchment. The air is thick with the scent of old paper and stale coffee. He feels a familiar thrum of frustration building in his chest. The lines lead nowhere, twisting into grids of sheer cliffs and impassable chasms. Then his finger stops. A faint discoloration, a watermark almost lost to time, aligns perfectly with a tiny, unnamed tributary of the Colorado River on the digital satellite overlay. It's a place park rangers warn hikers away from, a labyrinth of slot canyons notorious for flash floods and rockfalls. It's a place officially marked as no public access. The investigator is leaning in so close his breath fogs the monitor screen. He squints, toggling the layers. The old map isn't just a guide, it's a key, unlocking a hidden path through an area considered impenetrable. A cold wave washes over him, a mix of exhilaration and pure dread. This isn't just an obscure location, it's a deliberately concealed one. His heart hammers against his ribs. He pulls up the satellite imagery, zooming in on the coordinates. The canyon walls there are stained a deep, ominous red, like an old wound in the earth. The area is a jagged scar, a place the sun barely touches. He feels the weight of the discovery settle in his gut, heavy and cold. This is where the map is leading them. Not to a treasure, but to a tomb. The quiet anticipation he'd felt for weeks is curdling into a knot of foreboding. He pushes back from the desk, the chair's screech echoing in the room, and stares at the wall where the team's gear hangs, waiting. Ropes, harnesses, helmets, tools for a climb. They now look like instruments for a descent into hell. He closes his eyes, picturing the terrain. He can almost feel the oppressive heat radiating from the rock, hear the unnerving silence of a place devoid of life, smell the dry, dusty air that promises no relief. The responsibility for his team feels like a physical weight on his shoulders. This is no longer a historical puzzle. It is a calculated risk, a direct challenge to a place that has swallowed people before. Opening his eyes, the doubt is gone, replaced by a steely, almost grim resolve. He will not turn back now. He strides over to the map, his gaze locking onto one final detail he hadn't paid enough attention to before. Right at the destination point, beside a marking for a natural arch, is a small hand-drawn symbol. It's not a landmark or a directional arrow. It's a crude drawing of a coiled serpent with its mouth wide open, as if to strike. The air grows thin and sharp, tasting of dust and ancient stone. Liam and his team are pressing deeper into the canyon, dwarfed by sheer walls of rust-colored rock that claw at the sky. The late afternoon sun bleeds across the canyon rim, casting long, distorted shadows that writhe like living things on the canyon floor. Every crunch of their boots on loose scree echoes with an unnerving clarity in the profound silence. Liam's fingers trace the faded lines on Aris's cryptic map, the paper worn soft and fragile. The symbols, once abstract, are now terrifyingly real, corresponding to the menacing rock spires and narrow, claustrophobic passages that loom before them. He can almost feel Aris's presence here, a ghost of exhaustion and desperation clinging to the oppressive air. He imagines Aris's own hands trembling as he navigated this same treacherous path, and a cold dread snakes its way up Liam's spine. This isn't just a trail, it's a pilgrimage into one man's final, desperate hours. They round a sharp bend, the path narrowing into a passage the map calls the Needle's Eye. It's a claustrophobic fissure in the rock, barely wide enough for one person to squeeze through. But the entrance is choked by a recent rockslide, a jumble of fresh, sharp-edged boulders that look jarringly out of place against the weathered canyon walls. It feels wrong, too coincidental. As two team members begin carefully shifting a smaller rock, a sharp crack splits the air from high above. Liam's head snaps up just in time to see a microwave-sized boulder detaching from the cliff face, tumbling end over end directly toward them. He screams a warning, shoving his companion sideways. The rock smashes into the ground where they stood a second before, exploding into a cloud of razor-sharp shrapnel. The impact reverberates through the soles of their feet, a visceral, gut-punching shock. For a heart-stopping moment, the only sound is the rain of falling pebbles and their own ragged, panicked breaths. Liam's heart is hammering against his ribs, a wild drumbeat of pure terror. It wasn't a natural rockfall. He felt it in his bones, the unnatural silence before, the perfect, targeted trajectory. The feeling of being watched, a subtle prickle he'd been dismissing all day, now crashes over him with the force of a physical blow. They are not just following Aris, they are being herded. As the dust begins to settle, another team member, scanning the cliffs with binoculars, suddenly freezes. His voice is a choked whisper. "Liam, up there." He points a trembling finger toward a shadowed alcove 200 feet up the opposing wall. Liam squints, trying to see what he's seeing. And then he spots it. A single, sharp glint of light, where no light should be. It winks once, a tiny, metallic star in the gloom, the unmistakable reflection of a lens. Then, it's gone. The air grows still, unnervingly silent, as he pushes through the final thicket of ferns. The GPS on his wrist beeps a quiet confirmation. He's here. He steps into a small, sunken clearing, and the world seems to tilt on its axis. A scene of violent stillness greets him. Sunlight dapples through the canopy, painting shifting patterns on a collapsed tent, its fabric ripped open in a jagged, unnatural gash. The poles are not just unseated, they are bent at sharp, impossible angles. Like broken bones, papers, precious pages of Aris's geological notes, are strewn across the damp earth, their intricate diagrams and frantic handwriting bleeding into mush. The scent of pine and wet soil is thick, but underneath it, there's something else, something acrid and wrong. He moves with a reverence reserved for a gravesite, his boots making no sound on the soft moss. Every detail screams of a sudden, desperate chaos. A dented canteen lies near an overturned cookpot, its contents long since returned to the earth. His gaze locks onto a glint of metal half buried in the mud near a large, stratified rock face, the very anomaly Aris had circled on the map. He kneels, his fingers digging into the cold, wet ground. He pulls it free. It's Aris's rock hammer, its pointed end caked with dried, dark earth. He runs his thumb over the handle and feels a rough, flaking texture. It's not just mud. His stomach lurches. A trail of scuffed earth and crushed leaves leads away from the tent, a clear, desperate path of dragging. He follows it, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. The path stops at a patch of disturbed soil beneath a towering oak. The leaves are matted, unnaturally dark, stained with a deep, rusty pigment that has soaked into the ground. He doesn't need to get any closer. The faint, coppery tang in the air confirms his worst fear. This is where it ended. The last fragile sliver of hope that Aris was simply lost or had a fall shatters into a million ice-cold shards. This was not an accident. This was an ambush, a brutal, silencing rage unleashed in this quiet place. The chilling realization washes over him, raising goosebumps on his arms. This wasn't just a struggle. It was an execution. As his eyes scan the perimeter, sweeping the area for anything at all, a tiny glint of reflected light catches his attention at the base of a nearby tree. It's almost perfectly camouflaged by the leaf litter. He crouches down, his breath held tight in his chest, and carefully brushes the damp leaves aside. His fingers close around something small, metallic, and cold. It's not a rock, and it's not part of a camping kit. He brings it into the light, his blood running cold as he recognizes the unmistakable shape resting in his palm. A single brassy shell casing. The frayed edges of the deciphered map are glowing under the harsh light of a single desk lamp. Each line, once a mystery, now forms a ghostly blueprint of a man's final hours. An investigator's finger, slow and deliberate, traces the last known path, a crimson trail leading to a desolate X marked in the unforgiving wilderness. The pieces are slotting into place, not with a satisfying click, but with the hollow thud of a coffin lid closing. The air in the room is stale, thick with the scent of old paper and the bitter taste of a truth that has waited too long. The lamplight shimmers and the room dissolves. We are with Aris now, seeing through his eyes. The cold is a living thing, biting at his exposed skin as he navigates the tangled woods. The crunch of his boots on frozen leaves is the only sound, a lonely rhythm in the vast, watching silence. He's following the map, his breath pluming in the frigid air. A mix of excitement and unease coiling in his gut. He believes he is on the verge of uncovering a forgotten piece of history, a hidden ruin shown on the antique chart he'd been given by a supposed informant. But as he breaks through the final line of trees, the scene that greets him is not one of ancient stone. It's a clearing, scarred and barren, dominated by rusting barrels leaking a dark, viscous substance onto the poisoned earth. The chemical stench of industrial death assaults his senses. A shadow detaches itself from a nearby truck. It's not an archaeologist or a historian. It's a man whose face is a mask of cold fury. In that instant, Aris understands. The map wasn't a guide, it was bait. The secret he's uncovered isn't ancient. It's a modern, toxic crime scene, and these are its guardians. You shouldn't have come here. The voice is flat, devoid of emotion. Aris stands his ground, his hand tightening on the camera slung over his shoulder. It contains everything: photos, data, coordinates, his life's work, and now his death sentence. He raises the camera, a final, desperate act of defiance. This is his truth, his legacy. For a split second, there is only the sound of the wind whispering through the dead trees and the frantic beat of Aris's own heart. Then, a sudden, violent rush of movement, a brutal, lopsided struggle in the encroaching darkness. A muffled cry is swallowed by the wilderness, and then, Nothing. The clearing is empty once more, as if he were never there. The only witness is the pale, indifferent moon. Back in the present, the investigator pulls their finger away from the map, a grim understanding settling deep in their bones. They see it all now, the lure, the motive, the grim finality of it. They believe the killers had wiped away every trace of Aris and his discovery. But their gaze catches on a tiny, almost invisible notation in the map's margin, a detail so small it was overlooked. It's not a location, it's a key, a sequence that corresponds to a digital locker, a dead man's switch Aris had the foresight to create. They didn't just miss a detail. They missed the one thing that could burn their entire world to the ground. The air in the small workshop is thick with the smell of sawdust, oil, and something else. The stale, metallic scent of a secret kept too long. I am standing opposite him, a man whose hands have spent a lifetime building and fixing things, yet now they are trembling slightly on the scarred wooden table between us. His knuckles are white. He is not looking at me, but at the worn geological hammer I have placed on the table. It is the final piece, the one that ties the desperation to the act. Through the grime-caked window, a single shaft of afternoon light cuts through the gloom, illuminating a universe of dancing dust motes. In this light, his face is a roadmap of hardship, his skin like old leather. He is not a monster. My mind keeps repeating this, a desperate mantra against the cold facts. He is a man cornered by a lifetime of scarcity. The omniscient part of the universe seems to confirm this, peeling back the layers of his quiet defiance. He is not thinking of the life he took. He is thinking of the sound of the wind across the ridge, the promise of the earth, the glittering vein of ore he believed was his salvation, a birthright whispered to him by his grandfather. It is a treasure that became a curse, a secret that demanded a sacrifice. Dramatic highlight. His gaze finally lifts from the hammer, sliding over to a dusty, framed photograph on the wall. He reaches for it with a reverence that sends a chill down my spine. It's not a portrait of a loved one. It is a stark, black and white image of a desolate canyon, a place of rock and shadow. His thumb is gently stroking the glass, a gesture of profound, painful ownership. The canyon was his real family, his only love, and he was its sole protector. Emotional climax. They wanted to take it, he whispers, his voice cracking, the sound swallowed by the workshop's oppressive silence. They said it belonged to the world, but it was my world. The confession is not of violence, but of a desperate, possessive love for a piece of worthless land that held an impossible promise. I am feeling the solid ground of justice shift beneath my feet, turning into a moral quicksand. The law is clear, but the human heart is a chaotic, messy wilderness. For a moment, all I am seeing is not a perpetrator, but a man who fought to protect the only beautiful thing he had ever known. He is still holding the photograph, its knuckles now pale against the dark wood of the frame. My eyes are drawn to it, trying to see what he sees, and then I spot it. A flicker of something in the bottom right corner, almost lost in the deep shadows of the rock. It is not a flaw in the print. It is a marking, a deliberate, intricate symbol etched into the stone itself, something that feels ancient and utterly alien to this place. It suggests this secret is not his alone. It is far older, and whatever it's guarding is still down there, waiting. The official report lies on the table, a stark white rectangle in a room bleached of color by the afternoon sun. Its sharp corners feel like an accusation. Aris's father is tracing the grain of the wooden table with his thumb, a repetitive, grounding motion. The lead investigator's voice is a low hum, a recitation of dead ends and exhausted leads. Words like inconclusive and insufficient evidence fall like stones into the heavy silence, creating no ripples. The air is stale, thick with the scent of old paper and unspoken grief. Justice feels less like a destination and more like a horizon that keeps receding. Then the investigator sighs, a sound of professional defeat, and slides a final glossy photograph across the table. It's not of Aris. It shows a desolate, windswept ridge, miles from where the search was focused. Snagged on the thorny arm of a skeletal juniper tree is a ripped piece of fabric, a dark plaid flannel, identical to the shirt the prime suspect was seen wearing. The investigator explains how the suspect's truck was found months later, parked at the head of a notoriously dangerous, unsanctioned trail known only to the most reckless locals. He was never seen again. No body, no confession. Just gone. An absence swallowed by a greater absence. The room grows colder. It's not the sharp, clean justice of a courtroom verdict, but something more primal, an unsettling balance delivered by the wilderness itself. Dramatic. Aris's mother, who has been silent, finally looks up. Her eyes, red-rimmed and weary, are not fixed on the investigator, but on the photo of the tattered shirt. She imagines the man, panicked and alone, scrambling through that same unforgiving terrain. She pictures the wind tearing at him, the stones scraping him, the vast, indifferent emptiness surrounding him. The canyon that took her son has also claimed his tormentor. Later, as twilight bleeds purple and orange across the sky, the family stands at Mather Point. The wind is a low moan, carrying the scent of pine and ancient dust. It whips a loose strand of hair across Aris's mother's face. She isn't crying anymore. She is simply watching the shadows devour the canyon floor, her hand unclasping from her husband's. Emotional climax. In this moment, looking into the immense, beautiful, terrible void, a fragile peace settles over her. The closure she craved isn't in a manila folder or a prison cell. It's here, in the stone's embrace. A raw, somber acceptance that the land itself holds the beginning and the end of the story. But hundreds of miles away, in a climate-controlled evidence facility, a young archivist is doing a final inventory. He picks up Aris's digital camera, its casing cracked and its lens shattered. It's been logged as destroyed. On a whim, he presses the power button. For a second, nothing. Then, a single pixel flickers to life. Cinematic transition. Hook. The cracked screen glows with a faint, ghostly light, revealing one corrupted file the initial forensics missed. Its name a jumble of symbols, and a timestamp from 2 full days after the suspect's truck was abandoned. The investigator is standing on the precipice, the same one where the search for Aris Thorne began. Dawn is breaking. A raw, chilling wind snakes through the crevices of the canyon, carrying the scent of dust and distant rain. Below, the chasm is a riot of bruised purples and sleeping shadows, not yet touched by the sun. He pulls his jacket tighter, the fabric coarse against his neck. The case files are closed, the reports filed away in a sterile metal cabinet, miles from this immense, breathing place. But it isn't over. He knows it never truly is. He reaches into his pocket, his fingers closing around a small, smooth river stone, the one found in Aris's abandoned tent, a simple keepsake from a life that became a legend. He holds it up. The stone is a tiny, insignificant gray dot against the impossible scale of the canyon. And yet, for a moment, it feels heavier than the mountain itself, weighted with unspoken stories and unanswered questions. This is the case's final, haunting truth. Some answers don't bring clarity. They just open the door to bigger questions. Questions about obsession, about the wilderness inside a man, and the man inside the wilderness. He thinks of Aris, not as a victim or a ghost, but as a whisper. A story that dissolved into the rock, the air, the very soul of this place. Emotional climax moment. A single brilliant ray of sunlight finally crests the rim, striking the far wall of the canyon. The rock ignites, shifting from deep indigo to a fiery, impossible orange. It's a silent, violent explosion of color. And in that instant, a profound sense of peace settles over the investigator. It's not the satisfaction of a solved case, but the quiet acceptance of an eternal mystery. He realizes Aris Thorne didn't vanish. He was absorbed. The canyon didn't take him. It simply made room for him. He was a man searching for something vast enough to lose himself in, and he found it. The investigator unclenches his fist, the stone now feeling warm, almost alive in his palm. The wind howls, and for a second it sounds like a name. Or maybe just the wind. He knows the truth is whatever story brings peace to those left behind, the quiet, resilient souls who learn to live with the echoes. He looks out, not as an officer of the law, but just as a man, humbled by the sheer, unblinking majesty of it all. The legacy of Aris Thorne isn't a file. It's this feeling, this staggering, beautiful, and terrifying sense of scale. He slips the stone back into his pocket, a permanent fixture now. His gaze softens, sweeping across the horizon where the sky bleeds into the stone. The whispers are everywhere. And as the sun climbs higher, painting the world in strokes of gold and hope, a final thought takes hold, a question that hangs in the crisp morning air. If a story like this becomes part of a place so immense, does it ever truly end? Or is it just beginning?